Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for when to hire or engage advisors, contracts, and employees. If you're joining us, you're a business, small business, or about to start a business, or just concerned about how to hire your first anything at this point. What is the trigger, how to do it, and so forth. We're going to touch upon strategic hiring decisions for small business growth. And I want to introduce you to our corporate team and let you know what our limitations are. My name is Sankeetha Selvarajah. I'm corporate counsel for mergers and acquisitions here at Romano Law. I'm joined by Jamar Creech and Uzoma Eze as well, and I'll let them introduce themselves right now.
Corporate counsel, senior corporate counsel at Romano Law.
And I'm tax counsel at Romano Law, tax partner and based in Texas, practicing in both Texas and New York.
Okay. I just want to let everyone know that we love that you joined us, but please know that this entire presentation and any thoughts or concepts or legal principles discussed are just for information only. And while we are lawyers, we are not your lawyers. So if you'd like to engage us as lawyers, please feel free till the end, and you are more than welcome to engage us. Have a complimentary call with Romano Law, and we'd be happy to talk to you about your specific matter as well. Also want to hold your questions till the end. If you want to put it into the chat, that'd be great. And then we can actually address this as we go along. So first of all, we're going to talk about hiring contractors, and Jamar is going to kick this off for us.
Yes, thanks, Sankeetha. So it's very common for small businesses who are running a lean operation to begin as their businesses are starting to grow with looking at hiring. And one of the more common ways to hire is contractors. We don't start with employees. More oftentimes you get contractors. So when to hire your contractors? Well, first we look at, is this your specialty? If it's not something that you do, if it's not in your line of business, go outside of your business and find someone who does this. This is what they do. This is what they're known for. This is their expertise. Another thing to consider is, well, is bringing this person going to help, the CEO? It's going to help you get more time back. It's going to help you to be able to address some other things operationally with your business. A lot of times we spend our time doing things that may not be not necessarily beneficial, but it may not be the most efficient use of our time. So looking at a contractor that's going to be able to help you from an operational standpoint and to gain that time back is very important. And then as your business is growing from a client perspective, you want to have those contractors that are going to help you better service your clients. So we look at client-driven expansion as well. Now, in looking at hiring contractors, we have to consider what the legal requirements are for that. So one of the main things that you want to do at the beginning is get a non-disclosure agreement. You want to make at least the contractor know, hey, look, certain things are confidential. They're going to have access to some proprietary information. So you want to insulate the business in that regard. You also want to have it in writing. You want to have an independent contractor agreement that clearly sets forth the scope of work. It'll have indemnification provisions and some other things in there as well. But you want to get a clear understanding of what this contractor is supposed to do, how long the agreement is for, so that you'll understand moving forward and everyone's on the same page. There is also going to be a work for hire clause in there, which basically says that the work that they're hired to do, if there's anything of an intellectual property nature, that stays with the business and they're hired for that particular purpose. And you want to make sure that they have their own insurance, that they're covered. So should they make any errors, that their insurance covers those errors, and your business is not liable for that. So you want to, before you get into hiring a contractor, remember, get an understanding of what the need is, identify the need. And before you actually go out and get the contractor, make sure that you actually have the ability to pay. Sometimes we will go out there and we'll look and like, oh man, I really need this person to fulfill this obligation that I have, but I don't have the funds. So identify the need, get the funds, be able to pay, and be very careful about your particular jurisdiction, because each jurisdiction has its own way of identifying an independent contractor. Sometimes these contractors can be misclassified, and there's a whole bunch of case law out there about contractors who are functioning as employees. So you don't want to get yourself in trouble in that regard. So these are some things to keep in mind as you're looking at bringing in contractors.
Thanks, Jamar. I really appreciate that, actually. And what's also interesting when you hire a contractor is it has to be a fit. So while you're going through the decision process of deciding whether to hire, when to hire, and the legal requirements, part of that is also doing something like hiring someone on a project basis or an hourly basis for a set amount of time. We call it a probationary period to see if they're actually going to be a benefit for you. Just because you hired them once as a contractor doesn't mean you have to hire them again. Contractors are usually based on an hourly based or on a project base. So once that project is done, their contract role with your company is done as well. That's one of the key differences between a contractor and an employee. And we'll talk more about that coming up with Uzoma, who's going to cover up the employment side.
Okay. Let me take it to the other side. Let's take it to the tax side, because I found this out, that people generally don't understand the difference between an employee and a contractor. And the way I try to make it clear, even though it's not the best, is an employee gets paid a salary every month and taxes are taken out of it, and they get a W-2 at the end of the year. So I call them W-2s to differentiate them. Contractors, no taxes are taken out. At the end of the year, they get a 1099. So this is not helpful at the front end, because these 1099s and W-2s don't come to the end of the first year of work. But that's one easy way to tell whether you are one or the other. And that difference is huge, and it's key. So critical to this is Jamar talked about contractors. I'm talking about employees. He's talking about 1099. I'm talking about W-2s. Now, these misclassification cases, and the danger, before I get into what's on the slide, the real danger that comes out of it is a lot of people play fast and loose and just hire the person and say, we'll call it whatever. And as a startup, you're trying to bootstrap costs, you're trying to keep it low, you're doing anything that works, you're doing anything that's simple. Hiring a contractor is simple. You just give them whatever you agree to pay them, however you pay them when you can. Don't pay them, miss a date, miss a week, miss a month. That's between you and now. Payroll, very structured. You got to pay every 2 weeks. You got to withhold on those taxes. You got to take taxes from those people. You got to manage that. So it becomes a whole different thing when that person is an employee. But there are advantages and disadvantages each. So that's one thing I would say is we do not have the bandwidth on this presentation to give you the analysis between the two, but it's a danger spot. Why is it a danger spot? I don't like to bring up fear and scare people into doing stuff, but what I've seen happen is people go ahead and classify these people as independent contractors. 2 years into the making, no problems. But employee is happy. They're not having taxes taken out. They're doing whatever they want with their tax return. You don't have to report and withhold taxes and pay payroll taxes and stuff like that. So you're happy too. Guess what happens? There's conflict, there's litigation, there's a problem. They're mad at you. They come to a lawyer, and the lawyer looks at their contract, looks at the relationship, and says, and this is happening in one of the cases I'm working on right now, I couldn't find a way to get through to this bad guy who's hurting my client. My client is an employee. He's the owner. And I'm trying to get to him. He's not paying attention to me. So I asked my client a question. I'm like, so blah, blah, blah. And he goes, oh, I should be an employee. We had talked about me being an employee. I'm supposed to be an employee. I'm listed on the website as an employee, but I'm getting paid as a contractor. Alarms went off. I said, boom, this guy has already made a huge mistake. He's in trouble with the IRS. He's in trouble with my clients. He's violated so many, and all I have to do is write him a letter and say, oh, by the way, you don't want to talk to me, but now guess what? You got a problem with the IRS if you don't talk to me. So you see, you just gave me leverage that I didn't need. You just gave an employee the leverage they didn't need. Right now, that guy has to settle. He has to come clean with the IRS, pay penalties and interest, and still pay my employee their salary going back, withhold it. It's a mess for them. Would never have been a mess if conflict hadn't come out. So the IRS may not need to catch you. You might get caught just by business itself. So that classification is something you want to talk to a lawyer about early in the business. Why make the move? Business expansion. Obvious. Your business is expanding and you need employees now, no longer contractors. And there's some companies, there's some statutory requirements. If you're a corporation, for instance, you got to have at least one employee. There's a lot of reasons why you go from your first contractor to your first employee. Converting frequent contractors, that's just the contractor environment is by necessity, the way it's looked at is if you can control the way a person performs their work over a certain threshold, they fall into employee category and you could be in trouble with the IRS. So one of the things you have to do with contractors is kind of give them free rein. There's got to be a lot of free rein. And if you're trying to build a company, a time comes when free rein is not working for you. You need to bring people in and bring them into a vision, a mission, and kind of tighten them up. So you start looking at a stable workflow. That's a transition point for 1099 to a W-2. Required documents, employee agreements are used sometimes, but you really, especially depending on your jurisdiction, I'll give you New York, for instance, an employee agreement may not be necessary. In fact, we have to bring it up because people are used to employment agreements. But there are a lot of times when I would recommend that you don't have an employment agreement because it's an at will. What it means is there's a whole body of law that's going to govern that relationship once you call it an employee. And by putting an agreement in, you could trip up one or two things or give yourself protections that don't exist under the law. So you just bring them in as an at will employee, give them an offer letter, which some people call an employment agreement. That's an offer letter, not an employment agreement. And once you do that, of course, things start to kick in. You got to give them a code of conduct. You got to give them an employee handbook. All of those formalities around somebody being part of the organization as opposed to somebody who just services the organization ad hoc. So those are some of the high point considerations hiring your first employee. Sankeetha?
Thanks, Uzoma. And hiring your first employee is a decision that you probably should make with not just yourself, but also your attorney, your accountant. This is a group decision as well. Contractors are easy to, connect with and so forth, but even getting that contract together for the contractor agreement, you would still have to talk to your accountant and your attorney as well to understand the tax ramifications like Uzoma just brought up as well. And definitely with an employee, this is a team decision. And speaking more about team, from any point of your growth, okay, before you even hire an employee or a contractor, you want to build your advisory board built with advisors, okay? And so let's talk about why advisors matter. This is expert guidance at every stage of the growth. It doesn't have to be fancy. You could have 1, 3, or 5. We recommend odd numbers because if you ever had to take a vote, then there would be no deadlock at that point. 5 is the max that you want because then it gets into the law of diminishing returns. It gets into groupthink. Not a lot of decisions get made after that certain point. So you want to keep it at these odd numbers, whether it's 1 for when you first start off for your first 6 to 12 months, and then branch out into 3 as well. When to establish within 6 months of your company creation, okay? Because then you want to be able to talk through about what your future goals are for the 12 months as well as for a 2-year plan to understand how they can assist you and keep you. Their job is to remain at 30,000 feet so that they can actually assist you and say, hey, this is where we see some risk issues happening. This is how we can help you with our Rolodex or our contacts or our database in order to connect you with the people and the concepts right now so that your future goals can happen as well. By default, it doesn't have to be sexy. It could be a CPA, your accountant, and your attorney. But by default, you could ask them just to be there. You have to connect them anyway. Generally, it's a good rule of business. Always connect your accountant with your attorney so that they can also look at your company in that holy trifecta so that they all work together. And then a business advisor. Generally recommend a business advisor that has experience in your field, in your industry, or has already accomplished what you want, okay? Someone that is in the same role or the same kind of contemporary role is not a advisor. They are a contemporary. You want someone that's already accomplished what you want, okay? The legal documentation with an advisory board or building out with any advisor is just have an advisor agreement with an NDA, non-disclosure agreement. The street term is confidentiality agreement. Now, that can be a clause in a larger agreement, like the advisor agreement, or it can stand alone, like Jamar and Uzoma have talked about before. And then compensation terms. Sometimes a advisor just wants to come in and check in once a quarter and they don't want payment. But ideally, you should be able to pay them hourly, maybe once a quarter, or give them advisory shares. So after 12 months, you give them X% into your company and so forth. Advisory shares go anywhere from 0.25% all the way to 5% of the companies. So there is a range, but it doesn't go much larger than what that is. And it's commensurate with the amount of time and the skills and the effort that the advisor gives you. So don't give them shares first. You want to give them after they've served their time and their role. Okay. So it has to have like a 1-year cliff, 12-month cliff, and so forth for their role as well. Okay. So just consider that. If you don't have an advisory board right now, you can start today. Just list out different advisors that you would want that could assist you. Remember, the key distinction here is someone who's already done what you aim to accomplish. Okay, so you want that kind of backward advice in the sense that they would be able to look backward and say, this is what worked for me. This is how it might work for you. And let me connect you with other people. Then make coffee calls with them and say, are you open to taking on an advisory role? What's your timing? These are my expectations and so forth. Open and honest communication never hurt anyone, and it's definitely going to help you now when you build out your team. The advisory board that you have for year one does not mean that it needs to be the same one for year two. We recommend you don't keep advisors for longer than 12 to 18 months, just because your company is growing from 12 to 18 months. And so you might need new advisors. So as you grow, your advisor board grows and you grow as well too. So keep it flexible and just keep it like keep a pulse on where and how your company is growing, what you need for the next 6 to 12 months, and who is the best person that can give you the advice on that. Anything else to add, Jamar and Uzoma?
Nope, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only other thing really quickly on the advisory board, just as you're changing advisors over those 12 or 18 months, just go through that process of vetting, to make sure that you're, don't ever get go too far off course of that. So yeah.
That's a great segue into our key takeaways and the tips that we want to make sure that you understand as well. So while we're telling you tips on how to engage and contractor, employee, or advisor, number one rule, vet, and vet. Keep vetting, okay? Even after you've engaged them, keep vetting them, okay? Check the recommendations. Ask people who have worked with them before, or ask them, hey, do you have other clients that I can talk to? Or people that you've worked with before that I could speak to about a reference. Check their LinkedIn. Does it match up to what their resume said and what they're saying right now, their work experience, okay? Ask the tough questions now. Please ask them now and keep asking the tough questions, because the tough questions that you ask now is going to prevent the lawsuit later. That's the very simple equation here. So some of the tough questions that you can ask is, what is your time commitment? What would prevent you from giving your best work at this job role, etc.? Okay. And what is your client load as well too? So if you're engaging a contractor, normally they're also servicing other clients. You are a client of the contractor. With an employee, they're your employee. Advisor, they might be advising other companies. You want to ask them about their time situation as well. Okay. And also making sure that you want to know whether their work product is also pretty good. Okay. So can we see examples of your portfolio? Can we see other work that you have done? So just not checking as to who they worked with, but also looking at their work. That matters as well too. I know we have some horror stories on this, so I'll let the rest of my panel actually talk more about this.
So I actually had this happen to me. I was an expert witness in a federal trial. So me, attorney, but now as expert witness, federal trial, Utah. And first thing I see is the U.S. attorney puts my LinkedIn on the courtroom whiteboard and just goes bang, 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 detailing every single thing I claimed I ever did since 1994. Do you know how crazy that is? And they were just looking for anything to discredit me. And they came really, really close. It was like a karma thing that changed the interpretation of what I said. And I had to explain that in court. So, in a very real way, people, first things first, forget about this session. You got to be careful that what you put on social media is very clean because people are going to look at it. Then for this session, what I say to you as an employer is dive deep in their social media, dive deep in their LinkedIn, dive deep in anything they have the audacity to put out there, because that's what you're going to find. People are going to contradict themselves. People are going to say things that you can hold on to and ask the relevant questions that will reveal the truth that you were not going to get by asking some formulaic, where have you worked, who are you, that type of stuff. So definitely go deep on social media.
On the issue of timing, I had a client of mine who hired 3 employees before they were operational. And this was a grocery store. They hadn't sold a gallon of milk. They hadn't sold a loaf of bread, but hired 3 employees before operations even started. So on the issue of timing, needless to say, the burn rate that they had with the funds that they raised greatly increased with having to cover all the things that Uzoma was saying about that come with being or having employees rather. So timing is everything. Just be mindful of when you make that decision to hire, because that can greatly impact your business.
The timing is also important as to when you actually hire your advisor and when you also fire them. And while we're going to talk to you about hiring, because we'd love for you to expand your company, we also know that change and the growth of your company requires change. And that change also, when is the right time to fire clients, advisors, employees, and contractors? And we're going to talk more about that on our next session in August. We'd love for you to join us because the more you know about hiring, you should also know about firing. There's 2 sides to this coin as well, too. But in the interim, if you have any questions, please contact us for a complimentary call at Romano Law. You can speak to any one of us and any of the other attorneys at Romano Law, and we're happy to connect and learn more about your business. Okay.